Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jake. This channel is called Jake of All Trades, and today I'm going to be getting around to Nemophila's Brainwash. And you might be thinking, if you have been following me for even a short length of time here, Jake, didn't you just do this song? And the answer to that question is yes, which seems to be the answer to the question for a lot of these videos lately, because I've been going back and doing comparison contrast because I'm a completionist. Anyway, so I originally recorded my reaction to Brainwash, and I had held onto it for a while, partially because I couldn't think of a decent intro before I decided, you know what, I'm just only going to do intros when I can think of something, and partially because I thought there was a music video coming. So it's like, okay, well, I've got the audio, but maybe there will be a music video or a live version that comes out so I could do a compare and contrast. And a couple months went by and nothing happened. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm just gonna stick with the audio recording and just put that out there. And then yesterday, as of the time of recording, they come out with Brainwash, the music video. And I'm like, oh, now they release a music video. Well, I already released my reaction. There's not going to be anything new except for me commenting on the visuals. Probably not going to be worth putting it out. So I decided I was going to listen to the song. And then when I started getting into it, I'm like, wait a second. This isn't just an official music video with the studio audio over it. This is one of their like band practice type performances that they've been putting out lately, and it is a slightly different version than what's in the actual studio recording. Well, just messed up that authentic reaction. So I say all of that to say, I am going to be doing a compare and contrast, but I have heard both versions of this song. So I'm going to refresh myself on both of them, and then I'm going to break down the differences and similarities between the two different versions in my post-reaction analysis. Oh, and I do want to give a shout out to Chatwin78 for mentioning this on my style video that I just dropped earlier today as of the time of recording here, urging me to get on this because that's just what I do. If you comment on it, I'm going to eventually get to it. Even if you commented on a band that I have not done yet on this channel, it might come maybe when I'm 78 years old for all I know, but it's going to come eventually. So anyway, without any further ado, let's get started. All right, here we go. Brainwash, studio version. So let's start. I love the contrast between the low and the high there. Gotta keep these headphones on. Do them to my ears or something. The screams are piercing. I don't want to spoil my thoughts considering I already know the live version. But it gives me some appreciation hearing this here. I just have to wonder who pissed off Mayu. Oh. That's hypnotic with the way that sound travels. Just this little sway. Feels like a gunfire ring. Which fits because they got the gun in the song too. screaming gang vocals are so good. All right, here we go. Brainwash studio session, live-ish version, whatever we want to call this. Here we go. See, when I heard the beginning of this for the first time, I thought it was just the studio audio because it sounds so similar. And the gun, too. Sounds like the pinch harmonics come through a little bit more. See, that was what I really liked about this. Seeing the rest of the band like do the scream vocals. Those chords are really interesting there. So not as much traveling here. I think this is what originally tipped me off, that it wasn't the regular studio audio. That too. You can hear the crunch in that bass. This song's just so visceral. Jeez. And they're just like, yeah, we're having fun. Man. All right, so I went back to each version and did section by section breakdown and my overall thoughts of the two versions. And this is why, again, I checked out the live or band practice-y or whatever version you want to call this. Why I checked this out thinking that, oh, this is probably just a performance video for the studio audio, and it ends up not being the case because they are so similar. Really, up until the bridge, there's not a lot of major differences. The differences between the two versions are very, very subtle. So for example, in the introduction, like part one of the intro where it's still a little bit groovy, the only difference that I was able to pick up on was that the crash cymbal, or is it the ride? I'm not sure, not a drum expert. So, but one of the cymbal sounded a little bit different. It seemed a little bit more presence in the mix. It kind of seemed a little bit more isolated in the left channel. But that wasn't something that you normally pick up on when you're listening to the song for the first time. Kind of like, oh yeah, you're listening to the overall soundscape. But when you're listening for the subtle differences, it's not something I just picked up on now. So again, I thought it was the same track, the same recording, and it's not. Then in part two of the intro, Again, the scream was very consistent between both versions. Mayu just seemed like she knew exactly where to place that scream in her performance that she did in the studio. The only real difference, and I think the main hint that kind of started to give me a little bit of, is this the same audio track? Was in the live version, there's, you know, in the dano, 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 and the guitar, there's a little bit more, you can hear the thumb hitting the guitar string as she's playing it, so it kind of gives that a little bit more of that high harmonic to it. I think that was like my first hint, like, would they have kept that in the studio version? Like, I don't know, it was like my first little hint, but I'm like, oh, maybe this is how it was meant to be. So then we get into the verse, and again, I think this is where my second clue was. I'm just gonna call it the live version for simplicity's sake. In the live version, Mayu's vocals, at least at the beginning, seemed a little bit more buried. Her clean, like, kind of angsty, like, starting to kind of get into a little bit more grit as the verse progresses, was buried a bit. Whereas in the studio audio, it was a little bit more pronounced. You can hear her a lot more clearly. But then as soon as she started getting into the scream, she was like, she pierced through the mix just fine in the live version. So I think that was another thing that kind of tipped me off. I'm like, well, I mean, I've heard, and I maybe justified to myself a little bit, like, oh, I've heard some mixes where I felt like the vocals just were a little bit too buried, and maybe that's what was also in the studio version. So I could see that. And again, was still just thinking to myself, maybe I'm just misremembering how I heard the original studio version, and so this is just the same thing. Then we get into the pre-chorus. The vocals are very consistent. The instrumentals are very consistent. I think that on a second listen through, Mayu's vocals maybe sound a little bit more like she's putting a little bit more aggression in the studio version, where she might be budgeting a little bit more in the live version because she's got to get through the whole performance in one take. Then again, this isn't like a live cam or anything, so there was probably some editing done in the post-production here, but I'm assuming that it's fairly consistent for the most part and that she knows what she's doing. She probably practiced it enough in the studio to be able to deliver that same performance, and then knows that she has to perform the song live all the time, so she knows exactly how to budget it properly but still get the same level of brutality. Then get into the chorus. This is where I geeked out in the live version, because with the gang screams, I kind of assumed that it was Mayu maybe doing that on a separate track, and I was like, well, I don't know, maybe the band is involved, I'm not sure, but I've never really heard them scream before. But here you've got the band members screaming into the mic. I'm like, oh, that is awesome. I like flipped out when I heard that for the first time. I'm like, yes. So then one thing I noticed too was like the transition between the chorus and the second verse is like seamless. If you heard the song for the first time, you might not even know that they transition to the second verse, you know, it just keeps going. But in the second verse, pre-chorus and second chorus, again, there's not much more for me to add on those particular things. And again, the studio and the live versions are pretty similar. But then it was finally, as I referenced before, when it got to the bridge, where I really kind of started realizing this sounds different. And that was when the harmonic do-new-new-new-new-new-new on the guitar, I remember specifically listening to the studio version and hearing that travel between the left and right channel just kind of swaying back and forth. And then when it came to this live version, there was a distinct lack of that. I'm like, oh, so this is definitely not the same recording. And that's when I realized, oh, I done messed up. I was supposed to save this for a reaction. Oops. But that was my first major clue, listening to the two different versions. And then when we get into the bridge part 2, where it's just like the triplet, dun, 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 guitar, you know, they even have that section where it's isolated in the left and isolated in the right in the studio version. But in this live version, it's, again, on the same channel. If there was some post-production editing, they didn't edit that. They didn't do the channel isolation. So that was another clue that was like, oh yeah, this is definitely a different performance going on here. Another thing I noticed on the second listen through this time was that the wah on the traveling harmonic guitar seemed a little bit more prevalent. And maybe it was just me kind of tuning into like the way she was like pressing in on the pedal board, but I could hear the wah a little bit more, whereas like before it just kind of seemed like the swaying back and forth was a little bit more of like the channel panning, like being automated, going from left to right. But I could hear a little bit more wah on the live version. Then in the final section, again, not much more to add. Again, that section was also very consistent between the two different versions. And I think the only thing that I could really point out that I could hear as a difference was that, again, the main riff, again, sounded like, again, her finger might have been hitting the string a little bit, creating a little bit more of a harmonic on the guitar. Then I think there might have been a little bit more clean vocal in the final chorus from Mayu and the live version, where she just maybe ducks out of the screams just briefly, but then gets right back into the screams. So very remarkably consistent between what they were able to pull off in the studio versus like this live-ish session. Enough to fool me into thinking it was the same version until like certain parts where it's like that was the giveaway. So I thought that was cool. I'm glad I actually did come to check this out to break it down a little bit more in detail. Let me know if there's some details I missed. Drop it in a comment, let me know. If you like the video, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications so that you don't miss anything going forward. And let me know what other Nemophila songs or other bands you'd like me to check out. Drop it in a comment and I'll give you a shout out whenever I do those videos, like I did with Chatwin78. So thank you again, sir. Also, I want to thank Jonas S for supporting me on Patreon. I really appreciate it. But that's it for this video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. God bless you, and rock on.